thanks for watching Numbskull News. And today, I'm going to do a reaction video. I'm going to start throwing some of these out. Now, we know there's a lot of college football paraphernalia out there, a lot of college football channels. And so this one, I've never seen before, don't know much about it. They got 1.37 thousand subscribers, so I actually have a few more. Holy crap, another micro channel. All right. It's called A Peek Inside SEC Football, and lo and behold, there's TJ freaking Pittenger. And he's done my show. This dude goes everywhere. I mean, the hardest working guy in college football sports YouTube channel land, I think. We're going to see what this one's about. The title here, Gators legend admits something about SEC championship game. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to talk about. I haven't seen this, so we're just going to run it through. I'm going to give you what I think.
Steve Spurrier had some interesting quotes this week, and essentially what he said is that Georgia fans need to be a little bit more appreciative of Kirby Smart. And his exact quote, he essentially said that winning an SEC championship is the second hardest thing there is to do in college football. So the assumption there obviously is that the first hardest thing to do.
Well, I mean, you can ask South Carolina. It's been a while. It's been a long time. They were good this year, though. But that's a little, it's the second hardest thing to do in college football. I'm guessing the first hardest thing to do is winning a championship. Just the bloviation from the SEC, especially this year. Maybe in some previous years, but, because okay, it may have been really hard to get through Alabama when they're like that good, or Georgia when they're that good, or LSU when they're just that freaking team that year and no one can beat them. Maybe you got somewhat of a point, but it's like the chest bumping gets old, is all I'm saying.
Is to win a national championship. But that the second hardest thing to do is to win a Southeastern Conference title. And he actually even went on to say he felt like Kirby Smart had a better season than everyone but Ryan Day. And it's kind of hard to argue with his logic, but I ask you, TJ, in the playoff.
What about Freeman from Notre Dame? I would argue he had a better season. I would argue I think that's some dumbass logic right there. Didn't Notre Dame? Didn't they beat Georgia? That logic is not logical.
Playoff era, does a conference championship mean as much? I don't think he's wrong in saying it's the second hardest thing to do to win the SEC. I think that's accurate. But does it carry the same weight now that we have 84 bajillion teams in the playoffs?
Yeah, yes and no. I don't think there's a great answer. I would agree that it's probably the second hardest thing to do. Although I guess the bigger question is the gap between 1 and 2 is so large, right? Like winning the Big Ten is still incredibly hard. It's not like it's the gap between 1 and 2 is wider than what would you say the third hardest thing to do is winning the Big Ten, right? So the gap between 1 and 2 is much wider to me than the gap between 2 and 3. What I think makes it hard.
I don't agree with that. I don't know that I agree with that. But go on.
I mean, that's fine.
Oh, did you see TJ's face? He was like, oh my God. I don't know if I agree with that. My God. I'm a little sexist when it comes to women in sports. I generally speaking, they annoy the piss out of me. Sometimes they're okay. There's the rare oddity for me that comes around and they're like really good, insightful, and not annoying, and they don't interrupt the shit out of you when you're trying to make a point. I mean, you can always come back and make a point, but you see how kind of rude that was? That generally speaking, we take a look at this lady here. Uh, she's an attractive female, you know. Most of the time, females' voices can be kind of annoying, especially when they're talking sports or trying to be authoritative or, you know, try to do that thing. Sometimes, yeah, but you know, her voice isn't that bad. But when they have to just, well, I don't know if I agree with that. Blah. Like, well, okay, what is the third hardest thing to do in college football? I mean, number one is winning a title. Number two, and I think TJ was making an actual cogent point. He's like, okay, maybe it is the second hardest, but it's a wide gulf between winning a championship now in a 12-team playoff or a 14 or a 16-team playoff. It's much harder to do that than it is to win the SEC. And that bared out this year big time. And like he said, well, what's the second hardest thing to do? Or the third hardest thing to do? Be win the Big Ten. And that's a much smaller gulf is what he's trying to say. And she's, of course, interrupting with, you know, whatever. But let's go.
I don't
Look at the team that won the. Look at,
winning the Big 12, the Big 10 are really in the same sphere still. I think that the Big 10 is top heavy. I think they have probably
it's really hard to win it though.
Really, I mean,
for those top teams, you know,
it's not that hard to win it for those top
how
teams.
hard? How many SEC teams legitimately could have won the SEC this year?
A lot.
3 or 4? No.
I mean,
like who were the teams that really could like in the SEC? Who could have gotten to Atlanta and actually won that game? Georgia and Texas.
Georgia and Texas. It depends on who your opponent is. Ole Miss, Tennessee.
I don't think Tennessee.
Alabama.
I don't think Tennessee could have won the SEC championship. I think they had a really favorable schedule. They got them to 10 wins.
Theoretically, could have Ole Miss if they got to the conference? Could they have won? Yeah, of course they could have won. Yeah, they could have won. You know, all these teams could have. It's football. Any given Sunday, right, or any given Saturday, any team can win. Yes, but you have to have the record in order to get into the game. Period. Alabama wasn't going to get there because they lost to Vanderbilt. You know, Tennessee wasn't going to get there. Who did they lose to? Arkansas? I mean, all of these teams have a dog shit loss on their record. All of them do, except for Georgia and except for Texas. That's why they ended up there. So it's always a bullshit argument. Well, all these teams could have won. From what I saw out of Arizona State versus Texas, Arizona State could have won that game. If you replay that game, all right, if the very next week Arizona State and Texas play again, Arizona State could have beat them. Or they could have lost by 20. It's football, people. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous argument.
I just think it is a battle every single week. So surviving that battle and getting there is more difficult than surviving the Big Ten schedule and getting there.
Horseshit. Look at Ohio State, who just won it all. Look at Ohio State, who just won it all. I mean, they played Oregon. They played Indiana. Did they play Penn State during the regular season? Yeah, they did. So Ohio State had one hell of a schedule. Sorry. They went through, I think they played all three of the other playoff teams, did they not? In their regular schedule? And they didn't make the conference title game because they got beat by Oregon and they got beat by Michigan. And by the way, Michigan was still a bowl eligible team, even though they weren't as near as good as they were when they won the championship. But that is like the biggest rivalry in all of college football. It's one of those throw out the records kind of thing because they're going to go at each other's throat, right? That's just arrogant shit. And I'm not a Big Ten fan. But the Big Ten has just won the last 2 national titles. Don't tell me that's not a competitive conference. It's dumb shit. And she's like, well, it's just so much easier. Is it really easier to beat Ohio State? Ask Tennessee how easy that is. Ask Texas how easy that is. You know, Michigan last year, ask Alabama how easy it was. It's so stupid.
That's why I think winning the national championship is much hard. Like, I think that gap is much harder. Because to win 4 games in the playoffs is hard to me. Like,
Sure,
way hard.
it's a feat, but it is.
And
But
so,
I
like,
don't think that
confidence.
I think the gap to the Big Ten is probably. I think winning a national championship is the hardest thing. I think the gap between winning the national championship and an SEC is about as big as the gap between winning the SEC and winning the Big Ten.
That's absolutely stunningly ridiculous, considering you're talking about an SEC conference that just had a kind of an embarrassing year. And I'm sorry, TJ Pittenger, if you ever see this video. It's a bad pause. I'm sorry. She's prettier than you, even though the eye thinks it has a weird twitch thing. I got it. Whenever I see a pretty person, I got to point out some flaws. That way I feel better about myself. But I'm not a Big Ten fan. But that is not an easy conference. By the way, Illinois was not an instant win. Minnesota, you know, that's not a dog shit team. They're actually pretty decent. USC, are they down? Yeah, but you know that's still a bowl team. And I'm sorry. When I see a bowl team, I'm like, you know, that's still a pretty good team. They made a bowl. You know, that's still a team that can beat you any given Saturday, like I said. So it's all bias horseshit from this chick. All right, and don't just start interrupting somebody with just bias, just throwing up bias horseshit. We all know the SEC is the best football conference. You don't have to ejaculate them further by just concocting horse shit about the gap here, the gap. No, the widest gap, TJ's right, is winning a championship. Way down the line, if you want to say winning an SEC championship, okay. And then not far off the SEC, I'm talking right there with the SEC, is the Big Ten. Top heavy as you may say they are, good luck getting through the top heaviness of it. That's a bitch. All right, that's a straight up. Look what Oregon, they went undefeated. But look who they had to play in order to go undefeated. They had to beat Ohio State to get there. You know, I'm sorry if Michigan was down a little bit, but good freaking grief. Ohio State was a freaking juggernaut. So, I mean, just look at their run in the playoff. Holy shit. And like I said, they didn't even play for the conference title. And they won it all. So don't tell me it's super easy to win the Big Ten. Ask Penn State how easy it is to win the Big Ten. I mean, they've had the teams to do so for a while and haven't been able to do it because why? You know, Ohio State's a bitch. Freaking Oregon was a bitch this year. Look, I don't know if Georgia could have beat. We will never find out, but there's no way in hell they're beating Ohio State. And chances are they weren't going to beat Penn State. Chances are Indiana could have beat Georgia this year. That's the SEC champ. So stop with the horse shit.
The other thing about the SEC too is the so much of getting to a conference championship now in the SEC is luck. Like there's a lot of luck involved.
That's a new
Because
change
of the fact.
this year, though. That's not the more teams you add.
Okay, when you constantly have to interrupt, you don't have a point. You're just wanting to hear yourself talk, and I'm sorry. That's a lot of women. I'm married to one of them. Okay, let me say this quietly because she's in the house. But I'm married to one of them. Stop it. That drives me nuts. This is why I don't watch women in sports that much. They can't shut up and let someone else talk for a second. I understand that you're not going to agree, but you mean to tell me you can't retain the information as you're listening to TJ speak and then let him take a breath and then you come in with your counterpoint. You can't tell me you're not intelligent enough to do that. I mean, just because you're a woman doesn't make you stupid. There's a lot of smart women out there who can retain knowledge for more than 5 seconds. And if you can't, maybe, I don't know, a knitting class, a sewing circle, a book of the month club. You know, Oprah's got a book of the month club. Do that. You don't have to do a YouTube channel when you're interviewing a nice guy like TJ. He was on my show. I don't care if there's dead ass silence for 2-3 seconds. I want to make sure he's done saying what he's saying. I don't want to cut the guy off and be rude.
And the luck of just conference tiebreakers. There was a scenario with like 2 weeks to go where we could have had like 6 SEC teams with 2 losses, which just is lucky at that point if you get in, right? Like you're relying on what other teams have done to help your
Just like
conference standings and
everybody
things like that. Like so some of it's luck too, with tiebreakers and stuff. So the bigger question to me is not necessarily how hard it is to win. It's like how relevant it is going to be going forward. And I think that in the Big Ten and the SEC specifically, I think there's a lot of pride in winning that conference.
For sure, winning your conference. Yeah.
And I think that's going to subside.
Yeah.
I think that is going to drop as conference realignment, that may be on pause as that continues to change. Like when North Carolina eventually gets added, or Virginia gets added, or Clemson gets added, or whatever.
The SEC doesn't have any interest in expanding right now. That's
not.
What
I just said it was on pause.
No, I know.
But they will. They
don't want to expand right now. They want to expand right now. Yeah. That's the press clipping that was put out there. That's what the SEC has to say. How do you know? I mean, are you in the back room blowing Greg Sankey for information? I don't think you are. I mean, and it's not just her. Any dude that's saying that. Are you in the back room blowing Greg Sankey for info? Because if you are, you'll probably find out that they are very interested in some of those teams, but they can't say it. They can't add them right now. ESPN would be interested in that, but they can't do it right now. There's legal deals. And if you can't see that, then you're really kind of on the short bus.
Will expand in the next 5 or 6 years. Like when we go to, whether we go to super conferences, whatever we do.
I know you want that as an SEC or an ACC fan that wants out of that conference as a Florida State fan, but I don't know that I agree with that.
Okay, well then we can revisit the conversation in 5 years. That's not really what's important to me. As more teams are added to conferences, and as we get closer to super leagues or whatever, like as we get closer to the NFLization of college football, I do think the importance of winning the SEC is going to subside.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it becomes unimportant. I'm just telling you the importance of winning that is going to go down. You've got literal SEC coaches of some of the teams that you...
Well, if you're going to get 4 automatic qualifiers, does it really matter? And again, TJ, sorry for the pause. It's bad timing. The last one was pretty good. Anyway, she looks dumber now. How about that? But yeah, if you got 4 automatic qualifiers, who gives a damn who the champ is? The only way it would be relevant, okay, is if that was... You could make it more important to win the conference. I think it's important to win the conference. I think all fans, SEC fans, Big Ten fans, Big 12 fans, ACC fans, whoever, you want to win your conference. You got to incentivize it somehow with the CFP. So whether that's the only teams that get home games is the winner of the conference. The first game there, let's say if it's 16 teams, right? And there's no one gets a bye week. Okay, then your 4 conference championships, they, because everyone plays, no bye week, they get the home game. Everyone else is neutral site. How about that? How about them apples? But incentivize them some kind of way. I think that's important to do. And this shit, the history ain't written on this yet. No one knows how it's going to play out. So
nice as it is to win an SEC championship, you've got the problem that Georgia has right now. Who really cares? Georgia fans are not beating their chest. Now, I will say, if a South Carolina could have gotten in, if a Florida could have gotten in over their because of their last few years, if an Ole Miss could have won it for the first time, yes, it would have meant something. But to Georgia and Texas, their fans don't even care. And so you've got coaches that
Well,
care less.
Texas fans just care because they want to say they were able to come into a new conference and win. But
I don't think that. I think going forward,
Well, they played for it. Remember, this was the leader of the Big 12 for, 30 years. Joins your conference first year. And by the way, they won the Big 12 last year. That was the first time in over a decade in which they pulled that off. And they come into your house, into the SEC, get to the conference title game, and have this, they had a pretty damn great showing against Georgia. They had chances to beat Georgia and be the SEC champ. So what does that say? What does that say? When Texas has a pretty damn easy schedule. Did anyone else notice that? Texas had a really easy schedule. They had Georgia. They played Georgia and lost to Georgia, right? They beat A&M last game of the year. But beside that, I mean, there wasn't a lot there. A lot of people pissed and moaned about Indiana, but Texas didn't play anybody outside of Georgia. And if you want to consider A&M somebody, what were they, 8-4? Isn't that what A&M ended up being? It was 8-4. I mean, how incredible was that? It wasn't. So as good as the SEC is, it's possible for a team like Texas to virtually play nobody all year. I mean, have a freaking easy ass schedule for the most part of the year. I mean, Tennessee had a pretty easy schedule too. I mean, let's don't act like every week is some barn burner son of a bitch of a schedule you got. It ain't. It ain't.
I mean, do you think Oregon fans care about winning the Big Ten right now? Georgia fans don't care about winning the SEC.
Okay. I disagree with TJ on this. That was huge for Oregon. The new kid coming in on a half share, begging the Big Ten to get in. They get in, like I said, half share, and they win that bitch the first year. That meant something for Oregon and Oregon fans. I guarantee you it meant something.
Oregon fans don't care about winning that. Arizona State, I'm sure they're happy. Clemson fans don't care about winning the ACC this year.
That was huge for Arizona State first year in the freaking Big 12, and they win the Big 12, beating Iowa State, and beat them convincingly. That was huge for Arizona State. Are you kidding me? They've been in the shit house forever. And to go to the playoff, the first 12-team playoff, and damn near pull an upset against Texas like that? Holy shit, what a year. Epic. It was epic for Oregon. Now, the playoff wasn't so epic, but, they did win the Big Ten. So, I don't... And hold on. In Texas, it's going back to the Texas the first year of the SEC. Were they not the last team standing in the playoff? Oh, I think they were. They finally got shown the door by the eventual champion. Not a bad showing for Texas. And I have no love for Texas at all. But as far as SEC teams, I can make a case they were the best one this year. Oh.
Players want to win a national championship. So much more than they want to win a conference. Coaches are now coming out and saying they don't care. And
Oh, no, I disagree with that too. I think it's pretty big for players. Now, because here's the thing, we always conflate, when we think players, we're always thinking about the top players, right? 4 or 5 star guys, or guys who were maybe 2 or 3 stars, but now they're starters and they play like they're 4 or 5 stars, and their play dictates that they're going to get drafted to the NFL. Those guys. So all the top players, yeah, they want to win a championship, but there's a lot of players in college football. What is the roster? Like 100 freaking kids on the damn team? There's a lot of kids that are never going to play in the NFL, never going to sniff it. All right, but they're pretty good college players. They're too undersized, they're too slow, they're too unathletic for the NFL, but for the college ranks, they can do good enough to be effective in college. Those guys, yeah, they care a lot about winning a conference title. That shit's always going to mean something. It just is. Now, to TJ's point, it becomes less important, but I don't know. It's still very important. Do they matter? Yeah, they do matter. They matter to a lot of people. And if you see the kind of ratings conference championship games get still, yeah, they matter.
And fans of winning teams. Again, if a Missouri could have snuck in, if an A&M could have snuck in, a Florida, teams that haven't had a lot of success here recently, yes, it would have meant a lot. They could have. But the teams that are at the top,
the spoiled teams, that's what he means to say. So Alabama, who cares? Georgia fans, Georgia fans should be incredibly proud of winning the SEC. Even I don't care if it's a little down or whatever. They were expected to win the SEC, and they did it. Still a really good team. You still have a lot of pride in what you accomplished this year. You got beat by a really, really special Notre Dame team with a great coach, a great quarterback. I hate to use the word great for college quarterbacks because they're never really great till they get to the NFL. If they're ever going to really be great, but a really good college quarterback, how's that? A really special team. So it's really, and maybe it's just my Big 12 goggles I got on, but that's kind of like, I'm sorry, I'm also a diehard Cowboys fan, so I know what it's like to think that you should win the title every year. Well, shit. That just ain't going to happen. And trust me, the Cowboys are a much bigger deal than the Georgia Bulldogs will ever freaking be anywhere in this universe. Georgia, Alabama, the entirety of the SEC, compared to just the Dallas Cowboys, really doesn't matter. Because the Cowboys destroy you in relevance even when they suck. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm part of a huge, vast, elitist fan base of the Dallas Cowboys. But I'm trying to tell you, Georgia had a good year. They won the SEC. If I was a Bulldog fan, I'd be proud of my team for that. I'm like, damn, it sucks to get knocked out. We had a bye and everything else, and we get knocked out by. But you know what? You got knocked out by a team that went all the way to the conference, or the not conference, but the college championship round. There's a lot to be proud of that. And I can't stand these miserable, elitist, just taking shit for granted fan bases. Well, this is not good enough. Well, you know what? Fuck yourself.
I don't think conference championships are going away because I think they're too big of a moneymaker for ESPN. And so I think if we're playing.
She actually says something I agree with. Holy shit. As far as the level of importance, how fan bases should feel about them. Yeah, they should feel on top of the world when they win a conference. I don't care what conference. I don't care if you're winning the Mountain West. If you win the Mountain West, if you win LV next year because Boise State and everybody else is gone, or whenever that happens, they should feel ecstatic about winning the Mountain West. You kidding me? If Tulane wins the American, if Liberty wins their conference again, they should throw a parade. They should feel great about winning. And once again, TJ, I'm sorry.
I don't think a championship game, and this is obviously a very non-American take, right? So maybe people will just think I'm a communist for saying this. I almost think what you do in the regular season is more impressive to me than what you do in a one-off game. Like I've always hold on. Slow down. At least.
God Almighty, she can't help herself. How can you have? Because this is her channel, right? A peek inside SEC football. She's got a great logo down here. I mean, she's actually thrown a little money into this. Like I said, she got her makeup done. She looks way better than I ever will. What? You can't. This is how you're going to host? By shitting all over your guests? By being rude as hell? What's her name? Allie Peak? Is that her name? Allie Peak? Or it's just a peek inside? Don't we already have Greg Pflugar doing a peek, peek around the corner? College football? I don't know how big of a peak this is.
Let me make the point before we argue. At least let me make the point before you argue it.
And then the woman cup, the big old, look at this, the big old woman. God, it's just every trope. There you go. There's in every dictionary. You know, remember? I don't know if y'all remember this. The whole "What is a woman" thing that came out of that. That should have been the cover photo for that documentary. What is a woman? Is that?
Hold on. Slow down. At least let me make the point before you argue.
See, this is it's the woman cup. Well, hey, at least she put something in her mouth to shut her up for a minute.
Think about the years that Missouri made the championship, just because the East was terrible,
Yeah.
and Alabama was going, or the 1 year Auburn played Missouri, and Auburn and Alabama were just so much better teams than Missouri, and had less losses going into it. They weren't like two evenly matched teams. I do think removing divisions helps this a little bit, but I have always thought that what you've done over the course of 8 or 9 weeks in the Big Ten is more impressive than a team who just has a fluky win or gets lucky breaks or plays a team without their starting quarterback. And so I would actually be in favor of, I don't know if this will ever happen. This was proposed by one conference commissioner. I would be in favor of the regular season champion for conferences going to the playoff. Like the team that was the best.
That's how the Pac-10 used to decide it. They didn't used to have a conference champion.
The ACC didn't used to have conference champion. I mean, the SEC did, way back in the day didn't have them either. Like if you go back far enough, the SEC didn't either. I think we added conference champion.
Uh-oh. She didn't know that. Look at the puzzlement. Look at all this puzzlement. What? We didn't have a conference champion at one point? Yeah, that's right. You know what? If you go back far enough, who were the biggest teams back in, in black and white days? I'm talking between World War I and World War II. Who were the biggest schools, the biggest brands in college football back then? It wasn't any SEC team. I'll tell you that shit. I'll tell you what. It was Army. It was Navy. 2 service academies were monsters. Monsters. You know who else was a monster back then? Notre Dame. Oh, it was a bunch of Midwest schools that were the shit back then. It wasn't the SEC, man. I mean, when you get to like the 50s and the 60s, and on, it became... I don't even know if the SEC was like so dominant then. I think really... that's where it started. But, 70s, 80s, 90s, that's when they really entrenched themselves. And then, through the 2000s and 2010s, that's really where the SEC really launched as far as being this entrenched championship winning juggernaut. But that's just hilarious. She had no idea they used to not have a conference title game. Didn't have a peak inside that. Did not have a peak.
In general, it's the most dominant 2 teams that get there. Do we have
since we've removed divisions? I will say,
no,
because before
prior to that, prior to that too. There's one-offs, yes, but prior to that, the regular season mattered because in your division you played each other. So
I disagree there. I think it's better now than it was because again, remember how many years in a row we just sent the East to be sacrificial lambs to the West?
But like the East and the West were together already. So they had every single team in the West had already played each other.
Right. My point is that I thought my point is that the best 2 or 3 teams were in the West. And so
I
if
don't
we were
think it was that high. I think there's a lot of years where Alabama and LSU both could have made the argument to be in the SEC championship.
correct, yes.
But outside of those two, there is very rarely a scenario where there was three. Can't think of a single time.
We don't put three teams in one game. We only
No,
put
but
two.
what I'm saying is, you're saying the best 3 or 4 teams were in the West, and we sent the sacrificial lamb. No, it was possible that there were the best 2 teams were in the West, but it is not ever a scenario where Georgia or Florida or Tennessee wasn't at least the 3rd best team in the SEC. That is
Probably 13 would have been when Missouri went. You literally just disproved it by saying that Georgia, Tennessee, and when Missouri went in 2013, come on, Auburn, LSU, and Bama were better.
I don't know. I don't agree. I think Bama and LSU consistently.
Now she's arguing for no reason. Like, there's no reason to argue that. All right, closing thoughts on peek around the SEC. Look, maybe you like to look at a nice looking lady. You know, she's kind of a handsome lady. Okay. And beyond the superficial horse crap, there's not much there. There's just, you keep interrupting. TJ's a smart dude. He knows his shit. You know, I've had a run-in with him, and he was gracious enough to come on my show, and we hashed whatever we had to hash out. We hashed it out. Great guy, great guest, but you can just tell he's just getting like, son of a bitch. I can't speak, and he just mowing down everything. Then she's like, no, just don't agree. I'm like, that's a fact. What are you talking about? But you're going to disagree with a fact. Look, I'm going to put a link to the channel in the description. You could go in there, watch more of it if you want to. I think I'll pass. I think it's a hard pass for me. Maybe that's mean of me. You know, maybe I'm just not going to watch the channel again. And maybe you feel the same way about me. Fair. More than fair. Anyway. That's all I got for today on this shit. I'll be back with some more crap later, though. Bye.